Welcome to a quick video overview of your syllabus. I wanted to go over it with you verbally to make sure that you understood some of the more important points. Now, this is not to be taken as a substitute for you taking the syllabus very carefully and reading it probably more than one time. This is just meant to expound and expand upon some important parts of it. So please make sure that you take some time to read it very, very carefully and understand what's in there, and be sure, of course, to ask me if you have questions about it. At the bottom of the first page, you'll see my contact info. Phone number is there, as well as email. Email is generally the best way to get a hold of me in terms of this class, especially. I don't spend a great deal of time in my office because 2 of my 3 classes are online and the other is blended, so I'm not there very much. I do keep a pretty close eye on my email and will respond to you as quickly as I can. The second page has a little bit about me, and at the bottom you can see a picture here of really who runs my house. And she's not very happy right now because I've got her in her kennel so that I can have just a little bit of peace and quiet while I record this video. Let's look at the materials that you're going to need for this course. This green textbook, the 13th edition of the book called Management by Robbins and Coulter, will be our primary textbook. Yes, you do need it, and no, a different edition will not do. I don't know why they do this, but all they seem to do is really shuffle the chapters around and make things confusing on us as teachers. So it's very difficult to keep up with this. I also selected this so that it would be relatively inexpensive. As I understand it, the publisher does not offer it as an e-text anymore, but you can widely get inexpensive hard copies all across the web. So make sure that you check that, Amazon.com and so forth, and the bookstore also has those available. The red book is one that I'll quote from quite a bit. I consider that to be my third testament. And if I have to beg you to read this book, I'm not above that. I don't mind doing that. Please do yourself a major favor at some point in your life in the next few years and read this book. It's one that changed my life and perspective about how business and management works. I'm going to be pulling some things from it from time to time. Not required, but certainly highly recommended to you. And again, if I had anything better to recommend to you, I certainly would. At the bottom of the page are some additional books. In the success video that you'll watch, you'll hear me talk about some principles from this book on the left called The Slight Edge. It's about 17 chapters long. They're very, very short chapters. Don't take a tremendous amount of time to read. And I would strongly suggest that you get a copy of this book too. Now, it's not necessarily all together to do about management, although those principles are applicable for that too, but it'll definitely help you in terms of being a student, and it'll help you throughout life, which is of course the most important thing that you have to manage, organizations notwithstanding. I would say grab a copy of it, put it on the back of your toilet, and in about 17 bowel movements you'll be a lot smarter. There are also some other books on the bottom of page 3 that are written by a man named Jack Stack, who lives here in Springfield, and some of you may know him or know of him. He is the CEO of SRC Holdings, which is Springfield Remanufacturing Corporation. They've spun out a bunch of different subsidiary businesses from that. So this is a local grown principle called Open Book Management, and this is the series that he wrote on that, beginning with The Great Game of Business. I highly recommend that. I'll probably be pulling some things from that from time to time too. All 3 of those are really good. Now, a lot of students will ask me for additional resources because they like some of the things that I bring to the table. So I've tried to compile and listen a listening and reading guide and watching guide for you here at the top of page number 4. All of these people in these columns have widely accessible and available materials for you to take advantage of. A lot of it is on YouTube, and a lot of it is free as a result of that. You can listen for many, many months, even years, to some of these experts, even if you just listen to one video a day. There's enough content for some of them to carry you through for many years, and I would highly recommend that you do that. Now, some of them you may gravitate toward a little bit more so than others. That's fine. These are just a few of my favorites. But I would strongly recommend that you listen to anything that you can find on YouTube by the people who are listed in this listening column. And then read anything you can that's written by these authors. They will give you a tremendous amount of insight. They've influenced me. They've helped me with my understanding, and dare I say more so than any textbook that I ever read. And then if you like to watch some things with a little bit of entertainment value, there's some things for you there in terms of TV shows and one particular documentary that I like to recommend for you to watch. After all, this is about getting smarter, and we can't teach you everything that you need to know in this one course. Now, you see the objectives at the bottom of page 4. You can read those on your own. Let's take a look at something very important here, and that is how you're going to be evaluated for this course. You will have 12 unit assignments to do. Each one of them will be scored from 0 to 100 in terms of points, and they will consist of 3 parts. Each unit will have a chapter test, a supplement test, and your pack-back question and answers. Now notice that question is singular, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Chapter tests will be worth 40 points of the 100. Supplement tests will be worth 40 points of the 100. And then the pack-back questions and answers will be worth 20 points of the 100. For each unit, you have 3 things to do: chapter test, supplement test, pack-back question and answers. Now, here's how this will go. For each unit, I will give you an online test that covers the content of one chapter from the management textbook. Now let me back up and tell you that each unit will have 1 chapter per week from the management textbook, with just 2 exceptions. So make sure you understand that. For virtually every week, you will have 1 chapter to cover from that green management textbook. Also, each week, I will give you some supplementary things like videos, articles to read, those kinds of things. So it's really 2 particular sets of PowerPoints that you will be given that you need to complete and work through. Basically, what I will do will be to give you what I call skeletal notes for both the chapter test PowerPoint and the supplement test PowerPoint. These will have some partially completed materials in there for you, but you will be also required to read and or listen and fill in the blanks as you come to them. The third thing that you'll have to do would be to ask 1 question per week and answer 2 questions per week on the pack-back discussion board. That will be accessible for you through Blackboard. It's very easy for you to sign up and should be included in the fees for your books for this particular course. If there are any problems, you can look later on at the directions on how to fix that and get that plugged in. If you have further problems, certainly let me know. But this is a very easy thing to do in terms of earning points. 1 good, solid, well-written, well-thought-out question, and then 2 solid, well-thought-out, well-written answers per week, and you've got 20% of your grade already covered. This shouldn't take you any more than about 20 to 30 minutes, I would think, at most. This is not a lot, and it's a high value in terms of the ROI for the points you get. So make sure that you're doing it. Last semester, I have encountered a number of students that just simply did not do this or did not do this consistently, and it caused them to make a much lower grade than they probably wanted or deserved. So let me encourage you to please make plans to do that. Yes, it's kind of small, but it carries a lot of point value in terms of the week-to-week points that you can earn. Your course grade will be the average score of the 12 units that you complete. So you can calculate your grade up to the moment at any given point in time by adding up the totals of the scores for each unit and dividing that by the number of units that we have covered. And you see the example right here, and you see the grading scale below. So make sure that you understand that you always know your grade. I don't always see the Blackboard grading system be reliable in terms of being able to compute an average, and I've worked hard to try to make that happen, but it's not easy. So make sure you understand that you always know your grade at any given point in time. It's not up to me to provide that for you individually. You can calculate it, and you can use this to do that. Let's talk about how to communicate with me in this particular course. You are a college student. It is incumbent upon you to know what you're doing at all times, and certainly you have the right to know what you're doing at all times. But before you take time to contact me, I ask that you do a few things first. Most of the time, the answer that you need will be in this particular syllabus/guide, somewhere on Blackboard, somewhere in the weekly guide that I will send out, usually on Sundays, or in your email. Check one of those 4 places first before you email or call me, because odds are you probably can find the answer. Now, please don't be offended when I reply back to your email and say, check your syllabus, check Blackboard, check your weekly guide, or check your email. I'm just simply getting you to do what needs to be done because with all of the students that I have over the course of this semester, particularly since we're dealing with online and blended formats, I've got over 120 students that I'm responsible for in the semester. So I cannot be a personal secretary to all of you. You have to do your own homework in terms of being prepared and in terms of finding the answers prior to contacting me. So please make sure that you do that if you would. Understand also, I'm probably not going to be there at 2:45 in the morning to respond very quickly to an email. Make sure that you do these during normal business hours in terms of when you expect a response from me. So make sure that you're doing things ahead of time, be successful, and avoid waiting to the last minute to read and prepare. I know many students often run into problems when they procrastinate that they otherwise wouldn't run into had they worked ahead. Make sure that you're doing that for me and for yourself. Now, in terms of technical issues, I'm not a tech support person, so if you run into problems with the Blackboard system itself or with the Packback system itself, contact those help desks to get the issue resolved. Now, if something is missing from Blackboard or not turned on when it should be, or something of that nature, then of course let me know. But in terms of technical fixes, I really can't do that. Now, when you do email me, I ask that you do so using the etiquette here that I've provided for you on page 7. You need to make sure that you're putting forth your best foot as a pre-professional. In the office and workplace, emails are not text or instant messages, and it will kill your credibility if you don't communicate well and properly. The people who work with and above you will not regard you very professionally. So I outline here how to contact me, and I would ask that you do this and do this in a respectful format. I promise to do the same. You see the formula for this and how to do that. So please make sure that you follow that. And again, before you reach out, check those 4 sources that we talked about just a few minutes ago. In terms of grades, let me just say this. You earn grades. I don't give them. I only record what you earn. That's the way it is in this class, and it has always been for all of my classes. All of the things that are recorded for grades are things that students have earned. As a result of that, I ask that you understand that you must live with the bed that you make for yourself to lie in. You can make it very comfortable by doing the things that you know are needed to be successful, or you can make it very rough and rocky by not doing those things and creating a lot of problems for yourself. And I'm not going to be the one to bail you out on that. You will receive as a grade what you earn in this course. Please don't approach me about extra credit. Extra work by you means extra work for me, and I don't need that, and you really don't either, because there will be plenty of opportunities for you to earn points in this class, and it's really not going to be terribly, terribly difficult if you will just simply do what the principles of the Slide Edge book that I mentioned earlier talk about. Do the little things that it takes to be successful, and the big things will take care of themselves. Let's talk about unit assignments again really quickly. The chapter and supplement tests are going to be posted for you at 12:01 a.m. on Sunday mornings, and they will close that Saturday at 11:59 p.m. So basically what that means is this. You have all week to complete these units. You can complete them as quickly as you want or as slowly as you want. Now, obviously, if you jump in and take the test without going through the book and reading and filling out the skeletal notes for those PowerPoints and doing the supplemental exercises, you're probably not going to have a clue. Obviously, do those first. Also, too, remember you're going to lose 20% of your grade if you don't do your Packback question and answers each week. Now, most of the questions will be multiple choice, but don't get too excited because I'm going to also ask you to apply these things many times through scenario-based questions. It won't be simple regurgitation. That's not real learning, and I'm trying to make this as industry authentic for you as I possibly can, because that's how your work day is going to go when you get to where you want to be. It may already be, in fact, and those of you who have that, especially on a full-time basis, already know and understand that. On each test, you can use your notes, you can use your textbook, and you can use open internet access. I don't restrict those or lock those down with Respondus because I don't believe that's the way the world works anymore. Now, sometimes there will be some need for you to recall immediately from memory, but the way that the world works now is if we want to know something, we go to resources and find that information. What I want you to simply do is to know what those resources say and be able to do it within the time constraints that you have. And that, I believe, will constitute true learning in this particular course, at least in the format that we have. Now, the only thing you can't do is to work with or collaborate with your peers while you take these tests. If I find that out, which would be relatively easy to do if I wanted to, I have my ways, then of course that constitutes academic dishonesty, which we'll talk about in a little while. And you don't want to go down that road, and neither do I. So make sure that you're doing these individually. Now, on each test, I want to make sure you understand this too. You will be answering one question at a time with one attempt per question. You cannot backtrack, you cannot redo. This is done to help you to focus on that one particular question at a time and answer it per se without using the process of elimination. That's called guessing. That's not real learning. So you'll have one question at a time with no backtracking. That means, for your sake, you need to have your notes very well prepared so that you can know what's in your notes, where to find it in your notes, and that it's accurate. You have that one shot per question, and that's all you've got. So you have to know the material at least in a relatively deep, familiar way, or you're not going to be able to be successful. Now, how many questions are going to be on each test? That's a good question in and of itself. Some chapters are longer and have a whole lot more testable material than others do. As a result, you're going to see different lengths of these tests. But I promise you, I will give you plenty of time, even if you work at somewhat of a snail's pace, to answer these questions within the stated time period. But you have to complete the entire test at once. You can't come back and resume it at a certain point in time. Once you start, you must stop. But you will have a very ample amount of time to complete and do what you need to do. On page 9, you will see information about Packback and how that works. You can read that on your own. The minimum score that is generated by the algorithm that's scoring you is 40, which is not at all hard to achieve. 2, 3, 4 well-written sentences, and you should be at or above that, or at least very, very close to it. Adding links to back up what you say in terms of providing some relevant information from a reliable source will boost that score tremendously. It's not hard to do. It won't take you a long time. And it adds to this course in terms of an interactive dimension that we're missing in terms of not having in-person live instructor-based classes. And again, there are instructions on how to get to that and get through that. And if you have technical questions, the contact info for the Packback team is at the bottom of page 9. Page 10 is your calendar. And again, each week constitutes one unit with 2 exceptions that I want to call your attention to. Well, 3 really, because spring break is one exception. You won't have anything due that week. You're welcome. Week 5 and 6 from February 7th through 20th. That will open on February 7th and close February 20th, so you will essentially have 2 weeks to do those 3 things. And then also weeks 12 and 13 from March 28th through April 10th. That's a 2-week period as well. It opens March 28th and it closes April 10th. So you've got 2 weeks instead of just one on both of those occasions, weeks 5 and 6 and weeks 12 and 13. Otherwise, everything is 1 unit per week with a chapter, a supplement, and a packback. The last week of classes I have saved in case we need to push any of this forward and revise this calendar. So make sure you understand that. We may or may not have anything going that week, and we do not have a comprehensive final. So make sure you're on track with this. And if we keep up with this, and if all goes as planned this semester, and I don't have any emergencies, and the world and the nation and the university don't have any big emergencies that mess things up like it did last spring, then we should be able to pretty well stick with this so far as I know. Nevertheless, I did reserve that last week in case we need it. Now let's talk about course policies, of which I really have 4. Now a lot of this is very detailed, but again, remember a lot of this is also coming from the university, not just from me. So understand that a lot of this is university sanctioned. Being present for policy number 1 is a little bit different with regard to an online course. But really what this means is simply do your work when it's assigned. That's really what being present means. It doesn't mean necessarily showing up in a certain place at a certain time on a certain day like it does for in-person classes. Now, clearly, stuff happens, as one student so eloquently stated to me one time. I know that. Stuff happens for me too. It happened a lot last semester. It happened a lot in the spring semester, more so than usual, and it made things difficult. And I know that things can happen like that for you too. Understand, though, you still have the responsibility to quote unquote show up and do your work. That's an important thing to understand and to remember. Some of you may be participating in university-sanctioned activities and programs. That's understandable. Some of you may experience, unfortunately, personal illness. That happens a lot. I would expect for foreseeable future that to be a major problem for many people. And then also, if you have some military assignment, if that applies to you. And then, of course, anything and everything is subject to happen with regard to our families. But let's be honest about it. Despite the divorce and remarriage rate, more than 3 grandmothers dying in any one semester is probably not statistically possible. So make sure you understand that this particular course gives you a lot of freedom, but you still have the responsibility to do what you need to do. Now, again, if any of these extenuating circumstances arise, please let me know. I will be glad to work with you. As I said, they happen to me, and they're unavoidable, and you have to stop and do what you have to do, and I get that, and I'm totally glad to work with you on that. But you cannot just simply slack along for 5 or 6 weeks and then all of a sudden get convicted about the error of your ways and want to change and not expect some consequences to happen. If there's something legitimate happen, I'm glad to work with you. But otherwise, you have to do what you have to do. When you encounter some of these sticky obstacles, I may very well ask you for proof of that. And that's covered here at the bottom of page 11 and on the top of page 12. You need to read that and make sure you understand it. For final examination policy, I mentioned we're going to use that last week as a contingency week. We don't have a comprehensive final in here. Let me stop and say a quick word about work schedules. Work is very important. Many of you taking this course are probably working full-time. Some of you are working part-time, and I applaud and approve all of you for that. You need to. It's important not just for the money, but also for the experience and the learning. However, the fact that you've signed up for this class does not mean that you can postpone it or bump it to the bottom of your priority list just because of work. This means you will need to complete this particular course in addition to the work that you're doing. So work does not let you off the hook from doing what you've got to do with regard to this class. As before, if you have an emergency and you are in a sticky situation, just as quickly as you can, let me know. You have 4 ways to contact me, and again, email is the preferred way. I'll be glad to work with you, but you've got to let me know, and you can't just come back weeks or months later and tell me, oh, well, back in January, and this is March, I had this particular issue arise. No, it doesn't work that way. You've got to let me know when stuff is going on while it's going on. Policy number 2. All of your work is expected to be completed on time unless you make some sort of prior arrangement with me or an immediate contact to me and say, hey, I was in a car wreck this past week. I'm just now out of the hospital. Can I make up the work that I missed? No problem on that. We'll figure out a way. I'll work with you until we get it resolved to your satisfaction and mine. But again, you've got to complete the work by 11:59 p.m. each Saturday outside of any extenuating circumstances and get that in on time. It's just that simple. If you're having problems, let me know. We'll work with you. I will do my best to try to get back to you as quickly as I can whenever you have a question. It's not always easy to do, believe it or not, because I've got a number of different things going as well. But I do keep a close eye on the email, and I will, within 24 hours, get back to you. Usually outside of Monday through Friday, I would ask a 48-hour window because there's going to be some travel this semester, particularly for me. So make sure that you ask me well in advance, at least as much in advance as you possibly can, and I'll try to get back to you just as quickly as I can. But again, I'm not going to be there probably at 2:45 a.m. I hope for my sake that I'm not. With regard to the online nature of this course, we don't really have to worry too much about this class conduct thing, but once in a while students get their noses bent out of shape about something and smart off on email, and that's not really good. I try to be respectful to you in that regard, and I would ask that you be respectful to me. After all, you're either a professional or a pre-professional, and I am too. So we've got to keep this on a good level. Personal rancor and those kinds of things, it's not good. It's not good on either side, and I'm not going to do that to you. So make sure that you follow along accordingly, if you will, please. It is your responsibility to secure the textbook. It's going to be hard for you to be successful if you don't read this textbook, and reading the textbook is incumbent upon having a copy of it. It's amazing to me, one, how many students don't read, and then two, how many students don't ever read because they don't ever acquire the textbook. Remember this, ladies and gentlemen, the person who does not read is no better off than the person who cannot read. And think about what a tragedy it would be if you could not read. That's a problem. That's a major issue, especially in today's world. So make sure that you get the required course textbook. It's not that expensive. I chose it deliberately so that it wouldn't be. Packback is not expensive for you to access. Even the supplemental books can be ordered online. Used copies can be acquired dirt cheap. So make sure that you do that and are ready to be successful. Now, another thing too, dropping the course. Some people think that if they just stop doing work or stop showing up, in the case of a live class, seated class, that I'll drop them. I don't know. I can't tell if they're coming back or not. So I'm not going to drop them. They've paid for the class. They are entitled to continue. Now, it's not a good idea to just not show up or not submit work for an indefinite period of time. So make sure that if you've had enough of me in this course, that you go through the proper procedure for dropping it. Otherwise, I have to give you an F, unfortunately. I'm also surprised when starting this foray into online classes that I've recently begun, at how many students don't have what they need to be successful in terms of actually taking an online course. You need internet access. You need a computer. You need other technology tools like maybe even a printer and a scanner and things of that nature. I don't necessarily require all of those things, but if you don't have access to them, it's going to be very difficult for you to successfully complete an online course. So please make sure that you have those materials available. I also spoke with you earlier about how to write an email. Here's another reinforcement of that for your information. The academic integrity policy, again, the only thing you really cannot do in this course is work directly with another individual to submit work. Again, if I find that out, then we're going to have to go down a very long and dark road together, and I'm going to get the better part of it from you. So let's not do that. Make sure you understand that's the only request I've got. You've got open book, that's fine. You've got open notes, that's fine. You've got open internet, that's fine. I'm not going to do the Respondus lockdown. All I'm asking you to do is be man or woman enough to promise me that you're not going to work with somebody while you do this and do it on your own. If I see patterns, and again, I can see and detect those things, if I can see those things, then I'm coming knocking on your door, and we're not going to have a very pleasant conversation. And I don't want to have those conversations with you because I don't get paid enough to be a professor, a policeman, a detective, a prosecuting attorney, a judge, and a jury. I only get paid to be a professor. So make sure that you understand that's my one major request of you with regard to academic integrity. We've talked about deadlines. Without prior arrangement, deadlines stand, period. If you have a problem, I'm glad to help you with makeup work, but again, you've got to contact me and we've got to work on an arrangement for that. I don't know why you would want to record this stuff, and there's not going to be all that much to record, but the answer is no. A bigger mystery to me than anything that I have faced in the last few semesters is this statement on a required face covering. I don't know why we have to put this in the syllabus for an online class, but we do. So there it is. In terms of a campus closure, we have been told by the powers that be that this course will go on. The show must go on. It's the number one rule of show business, and that's the number one rule of an online class this semester, or so we are told. So plan on continuing unless you hear otherwise from me or from the university. The Title IX policy is there for you to read at the bottom of page 16. The privacy policy is at the top of page 17. This is for those students who like to have their parents or their therapist or their priest or another professor, and I've had all those things, intervene on their behalf to try to leverage me to increase their grade or something of that nature. The bottom line is this: unless I get a directive from one of my bosses, I'm not going to discuss your standing in this particular course with anyone but you. I don't care if you have signed the FERPA waiver or anything like that. This is not between me and your parents. This is not between me and your therapist. This is not between me and another professor. This is between me and you. So the answer to that is no, I'm not going to do that. Again, if I get a directive from a boss of mine to do it, then I will. If student athletes have our athletic department personnel coming over and wanting and needing to discuss that, then certainly I have to do that as well, and I'm glad to do it. But otherwise, I don't discuss your standing in this course with anybody but you, period. The statement of non-discrimination is also on page 17, as is the disability accommodation. Let me say a word about that. For the most part, the online class kind of takes care of itself, and I give you plenty of time to do what you need to do. If there is another issue that you encounter that prohibits you from successfully completing this course based on a disability, please contact the DRC. You see their contact information in this paragraph, and they can help me help you better. Don't just approach me about it, approach them first and work through them to help me help you. The last page is the pledge page. Now you'll notice, and somehow some people missed this entirely over the course of the last previous semester or two. Read this syllabus and this form carefully. I want you to complete it and sign and date it, and then scan it and email that to my graduate assistant before 11:59 p.m. on January 16th. Otherwise, you and I are going to have a very unpleasant encounter via email, so make sure that you do that for me. And you see, you'll need to fill in your name here, and at the bottom, you'll need to sign and date it. Then email that in to my grad assistant. In case you didn't know, you can do that very easily with a smartphone. If nothing else, just take a picture of it and email it from your phone. You don't have to necessarily print it out and scan it and all that stuff. Just make sure you get your name in that first blank, get a signature in that blank, and a date in that blank, and you're good to go. I hope this was of help to you. Please let me know certainly if you have any questions, and I'll be glad to further help you if I can.